Welcome back to Ghost Pirate Entertainment. I'm your host, Kanan Becker, and today we do another deep dive into Tubi. And with that, let's get to the list. Double Blind is a 2023 horror thriller. Directed by Ian Hunt Duffy, it stars Millie Brady, Pollyanna McIntosh, and Akshay Kumar. After an experimental drug trial goes awry, the test subjects face a terrifying side effect. If they fall asleep, they die.
Without your help, none of this would be possible.
This is a double-blind trial, 5 days total. What we're really interested in now is how long you can stay awake.
So this was surprisingly intense, and the idea of it, at least, reminded me of the sleep experiment, the old creepypasta story. But it's not the Russians, and it's an experimental drug trial, and so there are differences, but just that idea of you can't go to sleep, and what happens if you don't sleep for a certain amount of time, that is something that I've always found to be fascinating and kind of horrifying in a lot of ways. Because what ends up being the real villain is your own mind and playing tricks on you. It ends up being your enemy. And so I thought this did a lot of interesting things with that idea. Now, this is a small production kind of horror movie, so you have to keep your expectations in check when you go into something like this. But I thought the acting was really solid. It's well shot. It's well directed, and just in general, it's a really captivating, entertaining little movie, and one I think is definitely worth checking out.
We are gonna die in here.
You shot one of them. Held the rope for blood.
No! You can't take me!
They're out there.
Extraterrestrial is a 2014 Canadian sci-fi horror movie. Directed by Colin Minahan, it stars Brittany Allen, Freddie Stroma, and Melanie Papalia. The story is about a group of friends who must defend themselves against an alien onslaught.
Get in the car!
This is such a fun, surprising movie. One that you never hear anybody talk about, but is actually very, very good. It's pretty wild and over the top. It goes in some crazy directions and it's definitely entertaining. It has a really solid cast, especially Brittany Allen, who I was very impressed with in It Stains the Sands Red, and she's great in this as well. But in a lot of ways, this kind of feels like a roller coaster ride. It takes all these different directions and keeps you guessing and keeps doing things that you're not going to expect. But if you enjoy independent sci-fi horror movies as much as I do, then I think this should be the next thing that you watch.
It's a fucking game!
Yes, hide and seek. Remember? You wanted to get married.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Ready or Not is a 2019 black comedy horror movie. Directed by Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillette. It stars Samara Weaving, Adam Brody, and Mark O'Brien. A bride's wedding night takes a sinister turn when her eccentric new in-laws force her to take part in a terrifying game.
What game? Hide and seek? Are we really gonna play that?
Well,
This movie is so much fun. It's made by Radio Silence, the same people that just recently did Abigail and did the last two Scream movies as well. I know a lot of you guys are familiar with this film, but there is definitely an audience out there that have only seen Abigail and the last two Scream movies and didn't realize that the same filmmakers did this little gem. And in my opinion, this is as good or better than any one of those. It's also exciting because I haven't seen this streaming anywhere in quite a while, and so to be free streaming this month on Tubi, that's just so exciting because this is a fantastic rewatch. It's full of action and suspense. It's mysterious and creepy, but also very, very fun and has a lot of great humor as well. And Samara Weaving is at her very best in this. I enjoy her in everything I've seen, but this is where she really shined. It's a movie I would love to see a sequel of. I feel like there's so much more you could do in this universe. And I'm trying to dance around things in this because I don't want to spoil it for anybody out there that hasn't seen this. But if you've seen the end of this, you know that there's a lot more to this universe than we get to see in this. But this movie goes for it. It's exciting, it's gory, it's very intense, and just an absolute blast. And one that if you have yet to see, you need to definitely put this one on your list. In the Earth is a 2021 biological horror movie, written and directed by Ben Wheatley. It stars Jewel Fry, Reese Shearsmith, and Haley Squires. As the world searches for a cure for a devastating virus, a scientist and park scout head deep into the woods. As night falls, their journey becomes a terrifying voyage through the heart of darkness as the forest comes to life around them.
These are his memories. Can you feel him now? In the earth?
No, I don't know what you mean.
I think you do.
This is a movie that really focuses on dread. It is a slow burn. It's not one that's full of action and crazy, anything like that. It's one that forces you to be patient as it slowly unfolds and gets more and more creepy and dark and eerie. But if you can get into sync with the rhythm that this movie comes at you with, it can be very disturbing. It has a few surprisingly brutal moments as well that really caught me off guard. It's well directed, well cast, the cinematography and way that it's shot are fantastic. It's an interesting, thought-provoking film and one that I think is definitely worth your time.
Get down or I'll shoot.
You can't. I'm the mayor.
X.
Cemetery Man.
Cemetery Man is a 1994 comedy horror movie directed by Michael Sovi. It stars Rupert Everett, Francos Haji Lazaro, and Anna Fulci. A cemetery caretaker must kill the dead a second time when they come back as zombies.
My name's Francesco Delamorti. I don't know how the epidemic started. All I know is that some people, on the 7th night after their death, come back to life.
Earlier this year, I talked about this in a video where I was talking about my favorite underrated horror movies because you just never hear this film talked about. And I think it's a real classic and one that absolutely deserves a cult following. But at the time, it was impossible to watch. It wasn't really even streaming anywhere. And then it started to pop up over the last few months. First, it was on Shudder, but now it's on Tubi, which means it's free. You don't need a subscription. So anybody and everybody can see this. So I'm really hoping that finally this movie starts to get some of the recognition, some of the love and respect that it deserves, because it's beautiful. It's so well shot. It's so quirky and weird. It reminds me of my favorite stuff from the late 80s and early 90s. Just the stuff that is zany and weird, but also creepy and disturbing. It's got all those things. It's just full of so much charm. The cast is great. It's well directed. It really is like nothing else I've ever seen. A true one of a kind. It has a macabre sense of humor that'll not only cause you to laugh out loud, but also be grossed out. It's full of amazing practical effects, some outstanding puppetry, costume designs, makeup work. You name it, it's got it in this. I think this movie is absolute magic and one that I highly recommend.
Guys, come on!
VHS is a 2012 found footage anthology horror movie with segments directed by Adam Wingard, David Bruckner, Ty West, Glenn McQuaid, Joe Swanberg, Matt Bettinelli-Olpin, and Tyler Gillette. A group of misfits are hired to burglarize a desolate house to acquire a rare VHS tape, but they discover more found footage than they had bargained for.
Okay, here's the deal. We gotta break into this house, and all we have to do is steal this one VHS tape.
This is one of my all-time favorite found footage movies, especially when you're talking about anthology. It's just so well put together. As I was reading off all the names of the directors, it just was really hitting me just how all those are the who's who, really, of the horror world right now for directors. Because you had David Bruckner doing the most recent Hellraiser, as well as Night House, which was my favorite movie from 2022. You have Ty West doing X, Maxine, Pearl. You have Matt Bettinelli Open and Tyler Gillette, who did Abigail, and before that Scream, and like I read off it a little while ago, Ready or Not. And then you have Adam Wingard, who is doing the Godzilla Kong movies and did Your Next. I mean, it really is a who's who when it comes to directors. And even though some of this does feel dated and is a little bit cringe, especially when it comes to the bro culture, it still holds up and it's very interesting. It's a really creepy at times, well put together anthology series of movies. And I just love all of the VHS movies. And so I wanted to mention this one on here, but honestly, you can't go wrong with checking out the entire franchise of VHS movies because each one has a segment or two that are just outstanding. You know, there'll always be a couple that are just kind of all right, but there'll also be some that are absolute bangers. And this October, we have a brand new VHS that I'm very excited for called VHS Beyond. And this one is going into the sci-fi horror direction, so I'm really excited to see what they do with this. But I think this movie is a lot of fun, especially to see where these filmmakers have come from, how they got their start, and how their style has changed over time. So I think it's one you could definitely have a good time with. The Coffee Table is a Spanish black comedy horror movie. Directed by Kay Casas, it stars David Pareja and Estefana de los Santos. Jesus and Maria are a couple going through a difficult time in their relationship. Nevertheless, they have just become parents. As a symbol to shape their new life, they decide to buy a new coffee table, a decision that will shape their existence.
Y les aseguro que esta mesa, por diseño y por su nivel, les va a cambiar la vida a mejor. Les va a aportar felicidad al hogar.
Holy shit, guys, I can't even convey how dark and twisted and uncomfortable this movie is. But it's one that just has got under my skin and stuck with me for months now. It's really flying under the radar, and I get it because it's as black and twisted and dark of a movie as you're gonna find. It's listed as a black comedy, but it's not a funny, laughing kind of comedy at all. It's a very twisted, macabre type of sense of humor that's gonna find this funny. So don't go into this expecting to laugh. It's not that kind of funny. It's that awkward kind of giggle as you're anxious about what's gonna happen. But it is so impressively well shot, well put together. Everything takes place in mostly just this one location, but it never feels slow. You're constantly filled with dread and anxiety the entire runtime. And the big chunk of that is the performances. Their acting is just amazing. But the storytelling, the way it's written, the dialogue, everything is so natural and realistic. And that's a huge deal for what they're going through and for what all actually happens in this. But I can't say anything else because I don't want to spoil this, because if you know what happens in this, it really won't have anywhere near the impact on you. But be warned, this is a dark one. This is one that'll stick with you. This is one that'll probably make you extremely uncomfortable, but I do think it's phenomenally well done and very much under the radar. And by the end of the year, I think a lot more people will have this on their list.
You play a good game, boy, but the game is finished. Now you die.
Phantasm.
Phantasm is a 1979 sci-fi horror movie. Written, directed, photographed, and edited by Don Coscarelli. It stars Michael Baldwin, Reggie Bannister, and Angus Scrimm. Newly orphaned teenager Mike, his older brother, and their friends face off against a mysterious grave robber known as the Tall Man.
Hey, I don't like this place.
Something weird is going on up there.
funeral is about to begin, sir.
I have a lot of people ask me all the time what my favorite horror movie is, and it's definitely Phantasm. I'm not saying this is the best horror movie ever made, but it is my absolute favorite. I just love everything about this. The way it's shot, the soundtrack, the cast, the way everything looks, the costume designs, props. There's so much imagination and creativity in this. And even its flaws, in my opinion, just give it even more charm. But my favorite thing about this movie is just the way it feels like a dream. Everything feels fluid. The timeline, the way it's edited together, nothing feels exactly cohesive. It feels like it jumps around and keeps you confused, keeps you guessing. And even after watching it hundreds of times, I will not argue, some of this just doesn't exactly make sense. But it's a movie that has so much to do with style and ambiance and just attitude. I think it's an absolute classic that is still not as well known as it should be. So if you've never seen this, do me a favor and give this movie a chance. Halloween is a 2018 horror movie. Directed by David Gordon Green, it's the 11th installment in the Halloween franchise and stars Jamie Lee Curtis, Annie Matichak, and James Jude Courtney. Laurie Strode confronts her longtime foe, Michael Myers, the masked figure who has haunted her since she narrowly escaped his killing spree on Halloween night 4 decades earlier. So I put this on the list this week for 2 reasons. One, just to let you guys know that it is going to be available to stream on Tubi. And for 2, a lot of us, including myself, have been kind of soured by this trilogy of Halloween movies. And so it's kind of easy to forget just how good this movie is. As a standalone Halloween movie, it's fantastic. In my opinion, it's got to be my 2nd or 3rd favorite Halloween movie that has Michael Myers in it. And it's a shame because Halloween Kills just didn't hold up to that same standard, and then Halloween Ends jumped the shark and did its own thing, and for me, it doesn't work. I know some people love that movie, but I'm not a fan. Maybe one day I'll revisit it and it'll click and I'll finally get what David Gordon Green was doing with Halloween Ends. But either way, if you just cut those out, because I'm telling you, Halloween 2018, this one was supposed to be a standalone Halloween movie. They weren't planning on making a trilogy when they created this. And it really feels like a nice, complete Halloween movie with a satisfying ending. Now, I'm not saying this is the perfect movie either, but what Halloween movie since the OG has been? I mean, they all have their flaws. For one, I can't stand New Loomis. That character is a big miss for me. Some of the humor doesn't exactly work in this, but I love the cast. I love the mood, the way it looks. It's perfect when it comes to the atmosphere of Halloween. That one take shot of Michael Myers in this is as good as anything we've seen in the Halloween franchise. So if you're a little bit soured on the franchise like I am, I think now is a great time to rewatch this and just get a reminder on what a good Halloween movie 2018 is.
She'll rip your tongue out at the seam.
Dead Silence is a 2007 supernatural horror movie. Directed by James Wan and written by Lee Winnell. It stars Ryan Quanten, Amber Valletta, and Donnie Wahlberg. After his wife meets a grisly end, a young widower returns to his hometown to search for answers to her death.
There's an old ghost story around here about a woman named Mary Shaw.
The ventriloquist who lost her voice.
This is a real comfort food horror movie for me. It's one of my favorites from the early 2000s. It's definitely a flawed movie, but I feel like that gives it charm. But on top of that, it is genuinely creepy. I love the atmosphere it has. I love the costume design, the way the puppets look, the whole props in general are done really well in this. It just has that vibe that a lot of the horror from this era had, where they're not something to take super serious. They are a little bit campy and a little bit goofy. Some of the dialogue and things are not exactly great, but in general, they're a good time. It just kind of reminds me of what a fun haunted house is like, where it's fun. It's something you can kind of laugh at in a way, but yet it'll still get you creeped out, give you a little bit of the willies at times, but not anything to take super serious, not anything that's going to really linger on you after the fact. It has a lot of the same stuff about it that made me love Malignant so much. Just that little bit of camp, little bit of cheese quality, but not too much, but self-aware enough that it knows what it's doing and it asks you to kind of laugh at it and not take it super serious. But I think if you're looking for a fun popcorn horror movie, this is a great pick.
No, this isn't real.
What is happening?
Shrooms is a 2007 horror movie. Directed by Patty Barnick, it stars Lindsay Hahn, Jack Houston, and Max Cash. The plot follows a group of American students who are stalked by a serial killer while out in the woods looking for psilocybin mushrooms.
So tell us a ghost story.
Strange things happen up here around shroom season. People missing only for their bodies to turn up mutilated, but always with one thing in common.
What?
It's a real shame that because of the name of this movie, I feel like it has never got a chance. It just doesn't get the recognition that it deserves, because it's a really creative slasher horror movie that mixes in a psychological element, because it is a slasher, but because of the mixture of psilocybin and people not being in their right mind, it has a very interesting twist to it. Because throughout this movie, you're never really sure what exactly is happening. If what you're seeing happen is what's happening, or if it's a delusion of one of the characters. But it's well shot, well directed, well acted. It looks really cool. Some of it is a little dated. Some of the special effects don't quite hold up. But in general, I think it's a fun movie and one that'll exceed your expectations. It does things a little bit different than what you're gonna expect, with some fun twists and turns all the way to the end. But I think it's a perfect pick for this Saturday night. So do yourself a favor this weekend, pick one of the movies off of this list, grab your popcorn and your candy, and enjoy! And I want to give a huge, massive, enormous thank you to the Ghost Pirate crew, to you guys over on Patreon, and to the channel members over here. You guys mean so much to me. And if you would like to help support this channel over on Patreon, there's a link down in the description. Or you can become a channel member by clicking on that join button down there and support the channel that way. But like always, thank you so much for watching. Please crush that like button. And remember, guys, horror can be fun. And if you enjoyed this, click right here to watch me talk about 10 movies that I highly recommend. And I'll see you guys next time.